Hello and welcome to the assembly. My name is Keenan, and in today's workshop, we will be diving into the Bubble platform. Before that, let me tell you a little bit about the assembly. The assembly is a smart lab based out in 5 since December 2014. We have conducted over 300 free workshops since then. These workshops are divided into three different categories: hack, code, and data science. The target audience for these workshops are students, entrepreneurs, and professionals, and we focus on smart technology and practical applications. Let's begin with Bubble. So, what is Bubble? Well, Bubble is a no code platform for creating digital products. These digital products could be websites, prototypes, single page applications, or progressive web apps. Bubble allows you to create interactive multi user apps for both desktop and mobile web browsers. You can also build out logic and manage database all on their platform. What other stuff does Bubble offer? Well, they allow you to customize the user experience. They allow you to manage the data, like I said before, and also different accounts. They allow you to integrate with JavaScript or third-party APIs via their no-code API connector. They provide scalability with robust and hosted infrastructure, so you don't have to worry about hosting your application on another platform. And finally, they provide version control, privacy, and security services. Okay, to get started, we're going to go to bubble.com. And here's where you're going to need to sign up and register yourselves. Once you do that, you will be able to create your application. I've already created an account, so I'm just going to head over to new app. I'm going to need to give an app name. This app name needs to be unique. So for the sake of this workshop, I'll just name it Marketplace Application, and then I'll put application, and then I'll put the year 2022. Now, there is some other information that we need to fill out, but that is not going to be shared with anyone else but Bubble, as they want to understand where exactly you're going to be using their software. So after that, we just hit create new app and we wait for it to do a basic setup. All right, once it's set up, you will get like a boilerplate, and you'll also get this application assistant. But we're not going to be using this boilerplate. So how we proceed is we just follow the instructions on the left side of the assistant, proceed with all the steps. There's not much to change here. And before you hit close, start with a blank page. And that will clear out all the boilerplate templates. And then we can close it. Before we get started, let me explain to you the different areas of Bubble and what they are going to help us with. Now, as you can see, this is the design tab. This is where we'll create our visual side of our application. So you could think of this as the front end. We have a lot of these different visual elements like text, buttons, icons, links, and images, and so on. Then we also have containers. These just allow us to group items together so that we can move them between pages if we want, or if we are moving an item down a page or wherever these items that are in the group stick together. Then we also have input data. So that's input fields, multi-line checkboxes, and all these others. Then we also have reusable elements, which is where we will start off our application with. And that sort of concludes the design tab. Then we have the workflow tab. This is where we will be creating our actual functionality. There's nothing here yet because there is nothing on our page, but this is where we would be going to create actual events on our page. So what happens if we click a button? What happens if we hit the sign up button? And all of that is where we'll put all that logic here. Then we also have the data tab. So this is essentially our database. Now, every Bubble application comes with a user database, and this is purely for the preset sign up page. which we will dive into a little later on. Then we have all these different other options that we don't really need to dive into. Are the most important ones are going to be the data types. So this is where we'll create our databases and what items will go in the table. And then we also have app data. So this is where we will actually see the contents of our database. So what information is stored. Then we have the styles tab. This is all the preset elements that Bubble have created for us to use. Um, for the most part, we will be using some of them, but just be changing the colors and the sizing. Everything else would probably remain the same. There's no real need to change this because there's a little neat trick that we can do to keep these the same and have and still be able to customize it the way that we want. Finally, we have our plugins. So this is the final part that would actually affect our application. Here we can click add plugins, and here we can add a variety of plugins. These plugins could range from Stripe to even different themes sometimes, and most of these are free, the ones which do come with Bubble. So these are just some of the different options that we can pick of the different plugins. As you can see, there's free and paid. If you really want to make a very good application, I would suggest trying to stick with the more premium ones because they are done very neatly. And yeah, that's essentially all that we have in terms of our application for Bubble, or the tools that we have for Bubble. Then we also have the setting tab and the logs. We won't really be touching this in this workshop. All right, to start with our application, like I had mentioned before, we're going to start with our header. So we want to click the tab on the top and go to reusable elements and click header. Now, as you can see, it's a blank page with some of these elements on it, and you're not really sure how exactly to position the stuff. So before we make any changes to the design, we're going to go to grids and border. We're going to show grid. And personally, I like to take out the gutters. I like just having the squares. Keep the steps to 20. I think it's more easier to align elements. And we can make this slightly more gray so it's more visible. And then what I also like to do is to snap elements to the grid. Now, sometimes you might want to snap it to the edges and grid. So that means edges of these other elements, as you can see. But personally, just for the sake of making everything fit together consistently, I like to snap elements to the grid. Then we can also show the elements border. Now, as you can see, there are no borders around any of our elements. And I personally like to have this, at least while we're developing it. These won't be shown on our final product. So I like to just make it slightly darker than our grid and bring the opacity up. As you can see, now we have all our borders around our items. And that's pretty much it. We don't need to touch anything else from here, so we can close that. Now for our header, we can go ahead and delete all of this stuff. Okay. Now what we need to do is come here, click text, and place it inside. As you can see, our group here lights up in red. That just shows us that this text element is inside this group. Now, if you want to know what this group is, we can just double click it and you can see that it has a navigation container name to it. So this is our group of navigation. Now what we can do is click here and we can give our application a name, and we can say marketplace. Okay, that will be our name. Click out of it, and then you can see that it's made that change. Now let's add some styling to it. So if we scroll down, open the drop down menu, and we can select H1. As you can see, it's not really showing correctly. So what we can do is close that and adjust it so that we can see our content. Now, as you can see, that it sometimes doesn't show, sometimes it disappears, but just resize your elements so that they do show properly. Now, as I mentioned before, I don't like really touching the preset styles. So what you can do is once you've selected the style and it's already applied, you can actually click on this blank box here and it'll keep the previous style. And what you can do is just edit it from there. So I personally don't like the heading being this big. So I'm going to take it off and then make it 45. As you can see, make it slightly smaller. Maybe I can make it a little bit smaller. I think 42 or 43 should be good. Yeah. So I can make this a bit smaller and then move this to the right. Now the reason I'm doing this is because I want it all to snap properly to the grid, and I'm also going to be adding an icon to serve as our logo. So we can close that. We can come here and click on our icon and just click it. Now, one thing I do want to note is that you don't have to just click it. If we take our icon, we can actually drag it out to the size that we want, and it'll be that size. So it's gonna fit our logo. I think this is a bit too big, so what we can do is make it a little bit smaller. I think this should work perfectly fine. So now what we can do is we can choose the icon. Since we're a marketplace, we can search either for market, but there's nothing that seems to be there. So let's go shopping. Okay, so we could use this basket as our icon. Now, another thing is you can see that these colors are not the same. So we're going to go to our heading and click this preset color. Okay, so that's applied. Now we can go to our logo as well. And you can see that we don't have an option to change our color. So what we do is it's already selected standard icon. So we just click this blank space here. And then we get an option to change the color. So now we can change it that way. Perfect. So now we have our logo also in place. Now, one thing that we need to do is actually make sure that when we click anywhere in this area, it links us to our home page. So the way that we do that is we come down here to links. Where is links? Right here. So we can actually drag this box over these items. Okay. And then we can click this and then we can take it off. Now we can say the link destination is internal page and we can link it to our index page. And yeah, one thing that we do need to do is we have to ensure that we're naming our items. So this could be link, and then we can say logo, or we could keep this to home page. And then in brackets, we can say logo. Okay. As you can see for the text, it automatically, okay, so, okay, you can see how I'm only clicking the link. So if you want to access items which are behind this link, so everything is stacked on top of each other. If you actually want to access things which are below the stack, you can come down here on the left side and click element trees. Now, I'm not sure if this is checked for you. If it's checked, uncheck it, and then you can open up this navigation. And then from here, we can click it, click our different elements. So as you can see, our marketplace, our text already takes the name of marketplace. So we don't have to worry about that, but you can see here, our icon doesn't. So the way that we do that is we just click here and we, in the icon, we can say, this is our logo. If you want, you can even add hyphens if you want to be more organized that way, whatever suits you. So now we have our logo, or our logo, we have a proper name to it, and then we can close it. And now we have a logo for our heading. Now, the next thing that we need to do is add a sign up page or a sign up button. So the way we do that is click the button and we drag that out. Don't think we need it that big. Just try to fit it to this grid. And there we go. We got this button. Now I'm going to make sure that it snaps to the grid. Okay, perfect. And then I can type in here a sign up or log in. Okay, I'm not a big fan of what the colors are, so I'm just going to click out here, and I want all of this colors to remain consistent. So this is why I'm using the preset, so I can do that. And now in our configuration menu, we also have two other tabs, conditional and transition. We won't be touching our transitions that much, but mostly our conditional. So this means that we can actually change the state of our element based on different conditions. Now, as you can see, when the button is hovered, we can actually change the background color. Now, I want it to be inverted. So what I'm going to do is the background color is going to be transparent. Okay, and then I'm going to change the font color to our preset. And then we also want our borders to show. So we can click border style, all borders, and we make it solid. And then once we have our solid set, then we actually get the next option called border colors. So once we click that, we can go here and then choose the preset. Now I will show you a preview of this, but before that, I want to completely complete the header. All right, so that's complete. Now, since we're going to be doing a marketplace, we also need a different header for when people are logged in. So what we can do is just hide our button for now and work on two other links. So this other link is going to be another button, and it's going to be an icon. So for the icon, I'm just going to drag it out here. And this is where we want users to click if they want to go to their profile. So we can click profile, or we could say user. Let's see what other icon options we have. Okay, I like this one, so just use this. And like we did before for the previous icon, we can click on the blank, go to our color and choose the preset color. Now what we can do is actually position it here. I think that's also a bit too big. So what I'm going to do is just make it like this, smaller, and then bring it down here. Now for our other button, what we can actually do is actually copy it. So a neat way of quickly copying things is if you hold the control button and drag the element, you can see it makes a duplicate version. So now we just click here and we can say upload art, and it automatically changes the name. Now I don't want both these buttons to be the same, even though that they won't be shown together. So what I'm going to do is actually go to the style of the button and click outline. Now what that does is it inverts it directly. Now I click away, and what I can do is change it to this color, to the preset color, and also our border to the same color. Now I can go to our conditional, and our background color, when we hover over it, needs to be this solid color. So what we're going to do is hit solid, and oh, sorry, this is the border color. So I don't want a border. So what I'm going to do is actually make it transparent. Now for our background color, we're going to click it and keep it as the solid color. We can leave everything else as it is. We can delete that. And then for our font color, we can change that to white. Okay. And that should be it for our button. So we're going to have this here. And now because I can't see our icon, I'm just going to hide our sign up, and I'm going to drag this here. Now, as you can see, not everything might be aligned correctly. So what we can do is we can actually click multiple items, right click it, and then say center either horizontally or vertically. Now we want to just make sure everything is spaced from top to bottom at the center. So we center it vertically. And we can do the same with our link. Now, what we can do is click our text and right click here, bring to front, bring this to front. And now what happens is I can click both of these. Okay, so let's bring our icon also to front, our logo, and click both of these and say center vertically. Perfect. Now all of these are in the same line. And then since we need the link to be on top, we can bring that to front. Now, if I click away and I try to click again, I can click the link. Perfect. Now, before we end off our header, we need to add a few more conditional statements. Now, we want only the button and the user profile icons to show up when the user is logged in. So what we can do is double click on our icon, and let's rename this as well. You can say this profile. Okay, and then we go to conditional and we define a new condition. Now, when the current user is logged out, we want to show that this element is not visible, so we don't check it. And then we add another property of when the current user is logged in, that's when we want to show this element. And at the same time, we also want to go to appearance and hide this onload, because the user by default is not logged in. So we close that. We do the same for the button. We define a condition and we say when the current user is logged out, this element is not visible, and then when the current user is logged in, that this element is visible. Perfect. Now we can hide the upload and profile icons and show the sign up. We click this, we want both of these to be this, we want this to be on page load, and we add a conditional statement here as well, but this time will be slightly different. So when the current user is logged out, we actually want them to see this. So we check that, and then we add another condition and we say when the current user is logged in, we don't want the element to be visible. Now, one more thing I just want to double check is if I switched off the onload, so appearance, and okay, I need to uncheck it. Perfect. Now that should cover up our design for the header. The next part is to actually add some functionality to it. So what we can do is actually go to our index page, and you can see that the same items are shown here as our grid. So the way that we add our header to this is we go to our reusable elements, we click our header, and then we just tap. Okay, as you can see, the header snaps directly to our page, and then we can drag it all the way to our top. Okay, perfect. Now, if you want to see how this actually works, we can actually resize this as well. We can bring it down here. We can actually hit preview, and this will show us a preview of how our web page will look. So we'll wait for that to load. And yeah, as you can see, we have our logo. So you can see that our name of our website and our logo is slightly off center, but it's not how we positioned it. I'll show you how to fix that. But as you can see, if I go over to our sign up, it actually hovers and does our inverse. So we know that works. So let's try to fix this. So the way that we do that is actually we go to our header page, and we need to actually group it, as I mentioned before. So I'll even explain why we do that in a second. So we click our group and we draw the group here. Okay, and then we're going to call this group logo and heading. Now in our navigation container, just open it up. You can see our group heading has nothing into it. So the way that we bring items into it is we just click on our logo and actually just move it around until you see that the red is highlighted. Okay, and then we do the same for our marketplace text. We close that and then we just drag it. And now you can see that it's highlighted in red. Now you'll see also our group logo has both those items underneath. Then what we can do is actually drag our link. So we click our link and drag it up here. Perfect. Now if we try to click it, we can see that our link is clicked. Now, what we also want to do is to our group, we want to say that we want to make this a fixed width. Close that, go to our index page, we delete this, and we hit the header again. Now, you don't always need to do this, but sometimes it doesn't register that the item has been updated. So the best practice would just be to just re-add that element back. So we have that. Now we hit preview. And as you can see, they're both together, but there's another issue where it's on top of each other. So what we can do is go back to our header and actually space them out a little bit more. Or if you're fine with our uh, thing, you just unclick it and we leave it as it is, and just bring the heading closer. And then we add our link container on top of that. Perfect. Now we can go back into our index page. As you can see, now it's updated, so we don't have to delete it again. And then you can see it's worked. Now our logo and heading are both together. I'm just going to space it out a little bit more. As you can see, when we try to click on our marketplace, it actually reloads the same page because we've set it to go to our index page. Now, the next piece of functionality that we're going to work on is the sign up and login pop-up. Okay, so now for our functionality of our header, we can go back to our header. And now if you see on our elements tree that we have a sign up and login. Now, I do want to make a few changes to this. So what I'm going to do is actually go up to our sign up and login pop-up. And I'm going to make these slightly smaller. And I'll tell you the reason why I'm doing this. But first, let me make it. Now I want to change this to be slightly smaller in text. It's not that big of a deal. Now each of these elements I want to edit. So we'll bring our password down as well and then make it smaller. Email, and bring it down. Now I want to make another input. So what I'm going to do is hit Control and drag email up until it fits. Double click on it and change the placeholder to name, and the content I want to change it to text. It's important that you do this, otherwise it will not register properly in the database. So we click that. Now we also want to change this to input of name and then say sign up. Okay, and that's our edits for the sign up pop-up. You could also center this. I don't really think it's necessary, but you can actually edit a lot of things in this page as well about the pop-up. But let's go back to our header. Now what we want to do is we want this pop-up to show whenever we click this button. So the way that we do that is double click. So there's two ways we can do that. We can either double click and hit start or edit workflow. So this will automatically open it, or we go to our workflow tab, click here to add an element. We choose our element and then we say an element is clicked. We choose our element, which is the sign up, and this gives you a little preview of what it is. So which is quite helpful. So you click that and you can change the element the element color in the workflow tabs. Now we don't need to do it this way. I think the fastest way of doing it is actually going double clicking our element and say start edit workflow. It does everything else for us. And then what we can do here is click this. Okay. And then we don't want to sign the user up. We want to actually open another element. So we go down to our element action and we want to say show. Now what we want to show? We want to show the pop-up. Perfect. And that's pretty much it. Now, the reason that we don't hide it is if we go to our sign up and pop-up page, you can already see that there's a bunch of other functionalities. And when you hit this button, it actually hides the uh, sign up pop-up. So we don't need to do that on our header page. So we just go back to our header, and that'll be our functionality for that. Now, as you realize, we do have a few other buttons, which is the which is the upload and the profile. Now, for those buttons, we will get back to them later as we haven't created the pages for both these buttons yet. So we will be creating an upload page, and we'll also be creating a profile page. So in total, we'll have 3 pages. Right, now that we've created our functionality of our header, we can go into our index page, see that everything looks good here, and then we can just hit preview, let it update, and now we should be able to click this. Yes, and it just reloads the page because it's linking to our index page. Now we can also hit sign up. Okay, so let's actually sign up. So I'll just put my name. For the email, I'm just going to put a test email. Test at email.com should work, and then the password of 123. I can hit sign up, and it should create the account. And as you can see, uh, our items show up here because the user is logged in. Now we don't have a logout button, so we're kind of stuck in this situation, but that doesn't matter for now. We also can't click these yet because we haven't made the pages yet. So we'll get to that later. Now what we need to focus on is actually creating our database. To work on the database, we'll go back, click data tab, and go to data types. So in our users, we want to create a new field called name. Okay, and this will be of the type text. And we also want to add another one called location, and we want to show the geographic address. We hit create. Now we need, apart from the users table, we need 2 more tables. One of them is message. We can create that, and the other one is art. Now in our messages, these will be the messages sent from the buyer to the artist. Okay, so in that we want the details of what art is being sent. So we select the type of art, create. Then we also want our body, so the title or the contents of our message. Then we also want the user's contact information, so we hit contact, and then we hit text, create, and then finally we want to who this is addressed to, so to, and we keep the type of user. So this will go directly to the user that created the art, and we hit create. Then for our arts table, we need a few things. We need the ID of the art, so we can leave this as text. Then we want also the actual picture that he's going to be uploading, and then we keep this as an image. And then the last piece of the database is the title of our image, and we hit create. And that actually completes all our functionality from our database perspective. Now we will be moving on to our actual index page and starting to build that out. All right, let's move on to our index page. So let's head over to design, and here is where we want to show all our users' images or pictures or any art that they want to sell. And the way that we want to do that is like a marketplace, so like a grid style format. Now the way to do that is I've already shown you how to use groups. So we're going to be using repeating groups. This allows you to repeat content and be a little more dynamic based on your database. So we can just click that, and then we can actually drag it from this end all the way to the other. as you can see, we have now our repeating group. Let's drag it that way, uh, and drag it further down. Now we're really unable to see some of the lines, so what we can do is come over here, or sorry, we click our index page, edit it, and we change the style, and we have flat color, and then we make it slightly more gray. Okay, and then what we can do is with our grid borders, we can actually show it and make it a little more white. Okay, now what we want to do is for our repeating group, we're going to call this the repeating group for our art. Okay, now we want it in a grid format, so the way that we do that is we have 2 rows and 2 columns. Okay, and then we select a default style, and we can actually make this red. Now we can make this red just for the time being, so it's easy to see, but we will be removing this later. So we close that, and now we have our repeating group. Now the way that we use repeating groups is slightly different. As you can see, we have only 4 grids here, and we can actually change our vertical scrolling to extended vertical scrolling. So that would just mean that it loads more of the similar content based on the database as you scroll through the page. Vertical scrolling just means that there will be content within this area that you'll be able to scroll up. Now, the type of content that we want on our repeating group is actually our art. And our data source is going to be art. So we do a search for and art. We also want to sort this by the date that it was created, and we want it in descending order. So we can close that. Now, the way that we use our repeating groups is we actually have our primary block, and whatever we do in here will be replicated in the other blocks. So we want to add a group inside our repeating group. So this will house all the content of the art. Okay, so we want our art to have its title. So what we can say is title. Then we can just copy that, and then we change this to artist. Now, one more thing we need to do is, like similarly how we set our style to art, our type of content to art, we have to also click on our group, and then we say art, and over here we say current cells art. Okay, then we close that, and over here for our title we can say insert dynamic data. We can say parent groups art title. So this will take the title of our art group from our database, and then we do the same thing for our artist. So we say parent groups art creators name. Perfect. So now we both have the name and the title of our image. Next thing we need to do is actually add the image. So we click image, and then we drag it out. Okay, I'm not going to drag it out all the way because we will be adding another button soon. So let me just do that. We can actually make it slightly smaller, and we can move all the content this way. All right, now for art, we have just double click and insert dynamic data and say parent groups art, it's picture. And then we want to, set it to rescale, and then we can close. Now, as you can see, it's actually copied into the other blocks as well. Now, one last thing that we need to do is add a button. Now, the way that you could do that is you could either hit this button and drag it out, or if you want to make your life a little bit easier, we can go back to our header. We can view our element tree, uh, and we want this button. So what we can do is actually copy it and go into our index page, and then we paste it inside this block. Then we can make it smaller, and we can change this to message artist. Okay, and you see that it didn't copy the conditional formatting. So if you want to copy that as well, we can go back to our header, go back to our button, right click and say copy conditional formatting, go back to our index page and find where our button is, and paste. So I think we lost our button. I think we moved it out somewhere. That's okay. It should have now the conditional formatting. Yeah, as you can see, it has the conditional formatting. Now we need to remove the user logged in and logged out functions because we don't need that. And yes, we need to also change this name to message artist. Perfect. Now, what we do want, since this is the index page, all of this content is actually going to be shown. So we need to actually add a conditional formatting saying that we don't want to see this. So we can say when the current user is logged out, we don't want this to be visible. And when the current user is logged in, we actually, no, we don't want the data source. We want our element visibility to be on. So this will only be seen if the user is logged in. Now, do note that when we actually preview this, we're not going to see anything because there's actually no content up yet. But let's just make sure our group art has everything in it. As you can see, our message artist button was disappeared, so we can actually just delete that since we don't need it. Now let's double check. We have a conditional formatting and appearance and everything is looking good. Okay, and that just completes our design aspect of our index page. Okay, now that we've created our index page, we need to also create a few more things before we head on to the workflow. So what we need to create is a pop-up. So this pop-up will show only when the user clicks on the message artist. So we want to bring up a screen where they can actually send a message to the artist. So the way that we do that is we just click pop-up and we just draw that out. It can be this big. I think this should be fine. Wait for it to load. Okay, so now we want to change this to message artist, and we want to set the type of content to art. Now, what we also want to do is we actually want the information of that block to show up here again. And we have to do a few things in the functionality as well for that. But let's set up the other elements in this pop-up. So we have our image. We can actually make it as big as we want here. We want them to see a nice big image here. Sorry. Okay. All right. And I think this should be fine here. Okay. Then we also want to add our title. So this would be title, and then insert dynamic data, parent groups, arts, title, and then we copy, paste that here. And then we say, we click this and we change this to artist, and then creator's name. And then we also want to do the same thing for the image. We insert dynamic data, parent groups, arts, picture. We can also add a few more things. We can actually process this with image IX. This will allow us to resize our image to fit the box without, making the image look distorted, and make sure to have the rendering as rescale. So let's close this and that. Now we need a place for the user to actually send the artist a message. So what we can do is go down to our input field. We can drop a small box here, and we can say we want their email and set this to email. Let's drag it up to match the ending. And then we can also add a multi-line input for the body of the message. So we can say type your message here, and then we can close. All right, so now we collect the email and we collect the content of the user. Then we can add a button as well. And now this can be send message. And let's do a little bit of styling on this. Let's try to keep it similar to what we had before. We have the flat color, and then we go conditional statements, and then we want the background color to be transparent. Then we can also add our font color. We want that to be the preset color. Then the borders, we want solid borders, and then we want the border color to also be the preset color. And we can close that. Let's make this slightly bigger, and let's drag it to fit to snap to the grid. Perfect. All right, so that completes the entirety of the page actually. And now we can move on to the functionality. Now we have two pieces of functionality. One is when the user clicks this button, it opens the pop-up. So let's start with that. You can click start to edit the workflow and click here to add elements. Now, when we click that button, we actually want the information of that block to move up to the pop-up as well. We want that information to be shared. So the way that we do is go to display data, element, and we want it here, parent groups art. Then we need to add a show element. You can use those recommendations and it shows the pop-up. Perfect. Now, the next thing that we want to do is on the pop-up itself, when the user clicks the send message, we want the message to actually be sent. So the way that we do that is we start the workflow. Now, when they click that, we actually want an email to be sent. So we send an email. Before we send an email as well, I forgot to mention that we also need to create a message. So we have message as our table. So each item in a table is actually called a thing on Bubble. So we want to create a new thing, and we want this to be of type art. Of type message. And instead of adding all those fields manually, we can just click this. So the art will be parent groups art. The body will be the message, the value of it. The contact will be the email, the value of the email. And then 2 will be the current user, or the parent groups art creator. Okay, so we've created a new message. Once we create a new message, we want to reset the relevant inputs, and then we want to send the email. So as you can see now, it actually sends the email first. So what we can do is we can double click and drag it here. So now in the email, we want to address the email to the parent groups arts creator email. Okay. And the subject could be, so this is where we type in some of the preset data. So this would be n- new message, new message about your art. And we can actually add some dynamic data. Um, so what we could paste here is, I already have some of it preset, so I'm just going to drag that in. So for this, we could say someone is interested in your art. Let's add some details from the message. So we say contact, and then we insert dynamic data. And as you can see, there's this new item here. We can actually just click that, and then we say the body. That's, sorry, not the body. We actually want the contact. Okay, and then we can go down. Let's actually bring this down as well. Okay, and here we can say message, and then we insert dynamic data, result of the message, and the body. Then we can add like a little signature. We can, and that should be good. Then we can close that. Now all of this should be good. Let's just double check everything. Oh, I just realized a mistake. It's not the parents group, it's the current cells index. So we leave it as the parent group's art. Now, one thing to note is that the user doesn't know when the email is sent or the message is sent. So we could actually add an alert to inform the user that their message has been sent. So we can just hit alert here, and we can just drag out a small alert. We can say message was sent. Let's change the style of it as well. Let's change it to this. And then we can also change the background color to this. And we change our text to white. So we can have it centered horizontally. Okay, and then what we can do is go back to our workflow and say element action, show message, and then we have our alert here. All right, and that completes our index page. All right, now that we've created our workflow and everything for our index page, we can now move on to the next page. In total, we're going to be having 3 different pages for this application. So the first one being the index page, the next one is going to be the profile page, and last would be a page for the user to upload their images. So let's go on the top left and hit add new page, and we can name this profile. And we can actually clone it from the index page because we actually need some of the content from it. Now we wait for that to create, and then we go into our design. Now, as you can see that we have it, we don't have a few things like our button. So let's see where they are in our repeating group. As you can see, it's disappeared. Okay, perfect. Now we have the button. Now the thing is, this page is going to be our profile page. So we are going to only show art that we've created. So what we're going to do is delete that, and we're going to delete this. We're going to change the current cells art. We're going to do the current cells art. We're going to keep it as it is. I'm going to just extend this out a bit. Same with this. And we're going to say search for arts. we're going to add a new constraint where it's created by the current user. So this will only show art that the current user has created. And then since we also have the pop-up, we're going to double click and we're going to make this open up the new pop-up. So we can add an action here and we can say element action show, not show message, but we're going to element action, we're going to say show, and the element that we're going to show is the pop-up. Perfect. Now we're going to also have a different functionality for that, for the pop-up. So when we go to the design page, we can actually click our pop-up message. And now here, we just want the ability for the user to create or delete their image. So we can delete all of that and we can actually bring the button in the center here and we can say center horizontally and we'll change the contents of the button to say delete image or delete picture as we call it. And let's make it red. And similar to this, we're going to change this to red and this to red as well. Okay, now what's going to happen is when we click this, we're going to say start, click this and we're going to say data, so which is the thing, and we're going to say delete thing, and we are going to delete the parent group's art. And that should be it for the pop-up. Okay, now that we've edited some of the content that we've previously had, let's add some new stuff. So we can first start off with the group. We'll draw up this group and then we can call this group user info. And inside this, we want to say, or we want to show, we can actually close all of this. We can bring in our text and we can actually introduce or say hello to the users. We can say hello, insert dynamic data, our current user's name, and then we add a exclamation. Then we can just copy that. So we hold control and drag that. Make sure that's in the group. And now here, what we can do is we can say your email, just display some of the user's information. And then we can also add a map. So this map will show the user's location. So we say marker's address, current user's location. Now that's all good. The next thing that we need is actually to see the messages that other people have sent to us. So let's add another text field here and say my messages. Can add that here. And then we need to use our repeating group. So let's create that. Okay. Then we can set it to having only 2 rows and 1 column. And the type of content is actually going to be message. And the data source is going to be do a search for messages. And we add a constraint saying to equal to the current user. So you'll only get messages that were addressed to you. So we can close that. And now inside our repeating group, we need to add some content. So let's bring a group out here. And we say the type of content is message and current cells. Not index, current cells message. Now inside that, we want to add a text saying contact, and we insert parent group's message contact, and then we drag that down, and here we want to add not the contact but the body. Now this is actually quite limited space that we have, so what we can do is bring this slightly smaller and make it longer, and same with the and let's actually remove. Okay, perfect. Now that's done. The next piece of work that we need to do, I think we've already added the workflow for this. We've also added the delete image. Now we also need to add a logout button. So this will give us the ability to log out the user. So let's go back into our header, search for our button to upload our art. Let's just copy the whole thing, hide that back, move into profile, and paste. Perfect. Now what we can do is just make it slightly smaller, since the content of this is going to just say log out. Perfect. Right, now what we want to do is actually add the functionality of the logout button. So we click that and start the workflow. And what we can say is account and log the user out. And what we can also do is then we can, after they are logged out, we can actually go to a page and we can send them back to the home page. So we've added the delete, we've added the logout, and we've also added the group art picture. Now with the pop-up, I forgot to add here, we also want to display data in the group. The data to display is the current cells art. Close. Now let's go back, and then on this group, we actually want to make this fixed width. And that is because we have a lot of dynamic content here, like our map as well, because the map will actually enlarge and we don't want that. So we just make that fixed length, give some space there, and then we can just horizontally align this. Perfect. Now what we can do is actually move on to the third and final page. All right, all that's left now is to create the final page, which is the upload page. To do that, let's go back up to the top, add a new page and call it upload art. And then we can actually clone it from an index page. And we're not going to need most of the stuff. We just want the header from it. So we're just going to delete this. All right, we can even delete the pop-up. So we only have our header. Now that we have our blank page, we can go create a new group, and we can call this group upload art. The type of content is going to be art. Now inside this group, we're going to need three different things. The first is going to be the input for the title. So let's make that big here. We can say title of artwork. Then we can also add an image picture uploader here. Okay. So we don't do much here. And then finally, we can add our button. Now we can just go back to our index page and view our buttons. Let's go to our repeating group, the group art, and the button. Now the reason why this keeps going out is because the element is not visible on page. We'll just click that and then this should be permanently there. What we can do is just copy that, go to our upload art page, click our group and paste it in there. That should be our art. So upload art. And yeah, and that completes the design aspect of it. We could also add an alert like we did before, to inform the user if the upload was complete. So we can add that right here. We can say artwork successfully uploaded. And let's reset the style. Make sure the text is white. The background is this preset color. And now we can actually span this across the entire page. Perfect. So let's just work on the functionality of this page. So that'll just be this button. Start the edit workflow. So let's add an action. So we want to actually create a new piece of art. So click the type of art. And instead of setting again manually, we can just add all the fields. Now for the ID, what you can actually do is calculate because each of the IDs need to be unique. So you can do a calculate formula and we can say type of generator of random strings, and the length you can just type it as 10. And then you can add letters, non-capitalized letters and numbers, and then close it. The picture will be the picture uploader and the title will be the title's value. And then we've created it. Then what we can do is reset the relevant inputs, and then finally we can show message of the artwork successfully uploaded. And that's pretty much it for our final page. All right, before we proceed with the preview, just a few points to note. That we actually need to go back to our sign up page and go to the workflow. And since we added a new field, we actually need to go to workflow and click the sign up button, sign up the user and add another field. Over here, we can click name and we set that equal to the name signups value. And that will actually store the value. Another thing that we need to do is on the upload art page, we actually only want to send the upload if the values are not empty. So the way that we do that is if you double click the gray box up here and you see this option where it says only when, we say only when the picture value is not empty and the title value is not empty. So only when these are not empty will it send this value. Now we can do the similar or same thing for our profile page for the pop-up messages. And since here this is already delete, we don't really need it. We actually need only go to our index page and open the pop-up, double click our message and edit the workflow, double click this and say only when the email, the value of it is not empty, and the message. So this was the input email, and this is the where is the multi-line? Even that value is not empty. That way we don't have blank data filling our database. Now, after all that's done, a few things more that we need to do is just make sure that we remove this line. We say that the separator is none. And we do the same thing for the profile page, because I believe that's here as well. Yes, so we just add that to none. And we ensure that this section is fixed. And the upload art page is also fixed with. All right, now we can proceed to the preview. To preview our application, let's head over to the index page and hit the preview button. Now we can sign up. So we can sign up with Bob at email.com. The password can be 123 and sign up. Now you'll notice that we actually forgot to do something, and that's actually link these buttons to their corresponding pages. So let's quickly do that. Let's head over to the header, pull down the buttons, hit the upload art button and start the workflow. So what we do here is we head over to navigation and go to page. So since it's the upload button, we want to go to the upload art page, and we also want to add it to our other icon, which is the logo, or which is the profile. Then we can navigate to the page of our profile. Perfect. Now we can go back to our index page, go to the design view and preview that. Now what will happen is we'll be able to actually click these buttons and head over to our pages. So you can see it says our name, it shows our email, and it also shows us our messages, but we don't have any of that yet. Now, one thing that you can see here, that this is a scroll wheel. So if you do want to change that, we can go over to the profile page, click the repeating group, and we change that to extended vertical scrolling. Let's go back. And there we have it. Now you can't really see much, so let's go upload a piece of art. Let's say call this sample art 1. Let's upload that and upload that image and upload that. As you can see, our art is successfully uploaded. Let's go to the marketplace and see if it's published. And it is. It shows our title and it shows the artist. Now if we click message artist, you can see that it shows up with the title and with the email. Now there is a bit of a styling issue here, but that's not a big concern. We can change that later. Now we can actually send in a message, but we don't want to send it from this account because we're already Bob. So what we can do is go to our profile, and you can see that our profile also shows us our own art. We can log out and we can sign up as a different user. We can call this user Alice, Alice at email.com, 123, sign up. And now you can see that we can see our art, which is perfect. Then we can upload our own piece of art, and we can call this sample art 2, and we can upload a different image. Let's upload that. As you can see, it's uploaded. Now if we go to our profile, you'll actually be able to see your own art. You won't be seeing anyone else's art, which is exactly how we need it. So if we click in it, we can actually delete it. Now what we can do is go back to the marketplace. We can message the artist here, and we can say our name is Alice at email.com, and we can type our message as I'm interested in buying this, and we can send that message. Perfect. Now what we can do is go back to our profile, log out, and we can log in as Bob again. So Bob at email.com, 123. Once we log in, we can see our own work. We can see the other artist's work. Let's message her as well. We can say we're Bob at email.com and I'm interested, and we can send a message. Then let's head over to our profile, and here we can see that we have information from Alice. She said she's interested in buying this. Now let's say I don't really like this piece of art. Let's go ahead and delete that. So once it's deleted, we head back. We can see the image is actually gone, but the message will still stay because the messages are separate from the art. Now what we can do is go back to the marketplace and just double check that our art is actually deleted, and it is. And then let's log out. And finally, for the last piece of the preview, let's log back in as Alice to see the message from Bob. As you can see, we can no longer see Bob's piece of art. So let's go to our messages, our profile, sorry. And as you can see, we saw Bob's message, and we also have our piece of art. And that pretty much concludes this workshop. If you enjoyed this workshop, make sure to hit the like and subscribe button, and follow us on our social media to keep up to date with all our upcoming workshops. Thank you.